Yo, what is up, guys? It's Keldris13 here with another video, and today I'm going to start off 2019 with a guide to Wizard101, my opinions on the schools of the game and where their strong suits are, where their weak suits are, and my personal opinions ratings for PvP. Disclaimer: this is my opinions. You can obviously disagree with me in the comments below. But enough of that, let's get going. I'm on my myth here, and we're gonna go through every single school, starting from Storm on. And I'm not gonna try to put in my bias to this. I basically played every school except for the Life and Balance school. I do have a max Fire, a max Myth, a max Ice, 110 Storm, sort of maxed, but I haven't really finished my Storm yet. Basically every school but Life and Balance right now. So I'm gonna explain through all the schools what they're good at and what they're bad at. So let's start with the Storm School. Okay, the Storm School is a unique school. In my opinion, the Storm School is the go-to school for attacking and for farming, and they're just good all out everything. That includes damage or doing damage to all enemies at once. Now, Storm has a lot of annoying spells that play really good in PvE and PvP, which stuns, remove blades, gives blades and whatnot. For instance, the Shadow Pip spells for Storm, Glowbug, is the best spell in the game, period. Because it attacks all enemies, does an obscene amount of damage, and removes all blades. Glowbug is the best spell in the game, in my opinion, anyways. The tree, the Scion that Storm has, does double damage if there's no blades on the enemy, which is an okay perk, not the best one in my opinion, but you could do it in a Feeble into a Scion strategy, that would always work. But for PvP, for PvE, I would give Storm a 9 out of 10. The reasons why it's not 10 out of 10 is because soloing on a Storm is going to be a little bit difficult at endgame if you're by yourself, because if you don't have a lot of resist, Storm has the least amount of health out of all the classes in the game. But Storm also has a lot of damage, so that's why I give it 9 out of 10. For soloing anyways, for like bringing a Storm with you to quest or bringing a Storm with you to farm. Storm does well in this area for it's a high attacker and can do a lot of damage fast. So I would rate Storm a 9 out of 10. Also, I think Storm is one of the few schools that can reach easily 100% crit with good stats overall. So Storm can reach about 150 damage plus with max damage. With max crit, which is an obscene amount of damage with crit, and the spells do a lot more damage than any other school in the game. So for PvE, Storm is one of the best schools for attacking, and I would totally recommend it if you want to be an attacker. Now for PvP, Storm does very good at 2v2s, Storm can do very well at 1v1s if you're first, and depending on luck or not, Storm seem to struggle a little bit at schools like Life or Ice, who have a lot of resistance that's set toward them and a lot of tanking spells, and that Storm has a little bit lower health than most of those schools, so they can be wiped out pretty easily if, let's say, an Ice Wizard attacks with Abominable millions of times and they just slowly die. The one thing Storm does have is healing current, so they do have a heal compared to some schools that don't have a heal, like Ice. So Storm and PvP for certain scenarios are probably rated a 3.5 out of a 5. I'll do PvP out of a 5 and I'll do PvE out of a 10. So I'll rate it a 3.5 out of 5, which is really good. So Storm is one of, in my opinion, a good school to use. Now I'm not gonna like list the schools from top to bottom. I'm just gonna give them numbers because I think it's kind of unfair to say that this school is the best school, because there's no best school in the game. Every school has their own advantages and disadvantages. So let's go over Ice. So Ice has been a very controversial school recently, it has been for a long time when Shadow Magic was released. So, in about the Darkmoor expansion, KingsIsle, sorry for that voice crack, KingsIsle tried to have everyone have equal stats, almost equal stats. So, Ice, for instance, now with the new 130 gear, can reach about 120 damage with about almost 50 resist flat, with perfect accuracy, power pip chance, and still have about a good 25%, 30% crit rate, and of course block. You know, we don't talk about block with about 31 pierce. Not 31 pierce, but about like 25 to 30 pierce with the pierce ring on. So Ice is a monster of a school. Why is Ice a monster of a school? Because it's the tank school. And what do I mean by the tank school? All of the normal gear that Ice can get from drops give the most resistance. For instance, I believe the hat for Crackle Patrick is 15 resist, which is a lot of resist for a hat. I know the boots give 8, the 130 boots. The robe gives like 17 or something, so, and they give a lot of health, so Isis can reach about a good 8.7k to almost 9,000 health with good stats. My Ice personally has 8.5k health with 111 damage, 59 resist to all schools, and perfect accuracy, 93% power up chance, and about 55% crit with 25 pierce. So Ice can do a lot of things. For soloing, Ice is the best school to solo with in my opinion because it can tank. You know, you can tank as an Ice Wizard if you have the resist and the right stuff. For instance, if you try to walk into Darkmoor, right, and try to take it, it's not going to work out for you. Or if you try to go to a boss battle that's clearly overpowered for you because you don't have the gear, you don't have the pet for it, then every school is going to fail. But Ice is really good for solo. If you just want to solo, Ice is a really good choice. You can have a lot of health, a lot of resist. But prepared as an Ice Wizard in group battles to do most of the supporting. Sure, some people let Ice's attack, but I would rather have a Storm attack than an Ice. So for this, I would rate PvP and Ice Wizard. For solos, I would rate it a 9 out of 10. For group, I would rate it a 6 out of 10, unless it was Jading. So Ice Jade is different. I used to do Ice Jade a long time ago. Ice Jade can do a little bit decent, not as good as Life and Death Jade, but it's still an option you can do, since Ice has a lot of health. They can reach about 6.5-ish K health with Jade gear on, which is really impressive and really good. And then Ice also has the Legion shields, which can really help, and also pop a Life Mastery that you can spam Pigsy and whatnot. So Ice is also another good Jade school, not the best, but not the worst. So because of this, for group, I would rate Ice a 7 if they, Jade Ice. For PvP, obviously Ice is a 5 out of 5. For reasons they can, with the right gear on, the right pet, if they go ward and have less than 100 damage, they can hit about 75 to almost to 80 resist to 3 schools, which is ridiculous. And level 130 PvP, they can shield a lot. They have Abominable, which is their best spell in the game, which I think is the second best spell in the game. Reasons why, because it puts a 75 shield on, which is really overpowered. So because of this, Ice is obviously rated a 5 out of 5. Actually, that's actually kind of too high of a number. I'm going to rate a 4.5 out of a 5. Reasons why? Ice doesn't have a heal. So basically, the goal of an Ice is to shield against them. They can't do damage to you and knock their health down because they can't heal unless they bring a Life Mastery and Satyr. So Ice can't really heal. So that's my opinion on Ice. Now, Fire School. I have a lot of Fire friends. I played around with the school a little bit. And I used to talk a lot of smack about Fire being the second version of Storm, but let me explain why Fire is still a good school. Maybe not as good as Storm is, but it's still a really good school. And why do I say this? Because Fire does the most damage over time, the most DPS, damage per second. Fire is the school for you. Why? DOTs. Sure, there's not a lot of damage over time spells anymore for Shadow Pip spells that Fire does, right? But Fire has the most based damage in the game. For instance, Storm has the most critical, Fire has the most damage. So, Fire, if you want to have the most damage and do the most DPS, this is a school for you. Fire has some really good hit all spells, starting at level... What was Fireballs at? Let me look this real quick. Fireballs, okay, starting at level 22, you get Meteor Strike, and you get Dragon at 48. Meteor is still really good and still used today for Fire's version of farming. because fire can reach a good 160 plus damage with a decent amount of crit, maybe about 70% crit still. Fire does a lot of work. Sure, Bull got nerfed. If Bull didn't get nerfed, fire would be really good. Oh, I forgot to mention the tree for ice. Sorry about that. I totally forgot. The tree for ice is not that good. 90% health. If you're gonna get hit a lot, don't use a PvP. But the fire tree is the best, in my opinion, PvE tree in the game, because it basically requires you to put 6 traps on the enemy, and then you get a double damage, which in my opinion, for most bosses who allow you to trap, is really good, because you're gonna stack traps on the boss, the fire's gonna blade up, and he's gonna use tree, which is gonna do double damage already, and it's gonna do a lot of damage. So fire is one of the best trees in the game. For PvE, in my opinion, PvP it's still really good. You gotta set it up, you gotta do beetle, fuel, stun into tree, you know, but there's a lot of work to set up. But in my opinion, fire is really good. For group battles, fire can do really good as a main attacker, and fire can also do really good as a farmer with dragon, rain of fire, bull, meteor strike. So for fire, I'm giving fire a rating 9 out of 10 for PvE. Reasons why: because fire does do damage. For soloing, for soloing, fire is a mixed review. Fire has a lot of DOT, but they're a little bit squishy as well. Not as squishy as Storm, but they can be squishy. But fire can almost reach 7,000 health at 130 now with the 130 gear, so fire's becoming more relevant in my opinion. They're buffing fire slowly but surely. So I would rate fire actually for soloing maybe an 8 out of a 10, and then I would rate them for group 9 out of 10, and then for PvP I would rate them an 8 out of a 10. The reasons why they rate 8 out of 10 is because fire is one of the schools people usually set to, and a fire shield is like one of the most popular shields. And for instance, if you know when to shield against a fire, you're safe. But the tree is still a warning message to a lot of wizards. You know, they underestimate the fire with the tree and the Ifrit. But fires can easily be shut down if you defense against them and you just, you know, slowly hit chip at them. Their heals, I believe, are like power links and whatnot. They're not really the best heals, but they're still heals. So that's why I rate fire 8 out of 10 in PvP. And I'm talking about 1/3 PvP here. I'm not talking about the lower levels. Because at the lower levels, fire obviously shines over all the other classes because they have Burning Rampage. So, this is 130 PvP I'm talking about here. So, Death School is obviously a nice side, but I'm going to talk about Death here. Pretend Marlon is my Death person here. So, Death for soloing, in my opinion, is the best school in the game to solo with. Why? Because they get health back from their hits. So, you don't really have to have a life mastery with Death on. You can just use your own attacks and get health back that way. The downside of Death is group battles, and I usually only go Jade on my Death for group situations because Jading for Death is the best Jade in my opinion. Now you'd be wondering why. Easy. Get Death immunity. You could do infinite Juju on enemies without taking damage. You could do infinite 3 pips. What's it called? I can't remember the name of the spell. Empower. Yeah, you can do infinite empowers without taking damage. You can give blaze to people without taking damage. So Death is really good because their support with the Jade works well. You could do infinite sacrifices without even taking damage. You can heal people without taking damage that way. So I think Death is one of the best Jade schools. Maybe the second best compared to Life, because Life has all the healing spells, but Death Jade is still really, really good for PvE. Obviously, Juju got nerfed to PvP, which was actually needed. People say, why? You know, you're just mad that people Juju you every round. No, it's actually annoying to deal with, because think about it. If you're second against a Juju spammer, all you do is Juju you till you're out of cards. Then people say, oh, just make him run out of cards. Like, no. Like, people just want an easy way out, and it's not going to be the way. So, for PvP, for soloing, Death can do a lot of damage. Now, I haven't really tested 130 damage Death stats yet, but their spells are a little bit more lacking toward the the other 3 schools. So, Life, Myth, and Death. Their Death's damage on their spells is a little bit lower. So, for instance, Cthulhu only does 830 base, and it's really low compared to Bull, or it's really low compared to other attack all spells. But it can still do a lot of damage and it can heal you very fast. So it's not like it's not really like a bad spell, but Death's Noble attacking spells do a little bit less damage, a little bit too low. So this is why for PvP I give Death for solo 3.5 out of 5, and then for like duel and whatnot I give Death a higher score of 5 out of 5 for jading and whatnot. For soloing I rate obviously for PvE for soloing I rate a 10 out of 10, really good for soloing, and I rate for group for jading 10 out of 10 obviously, well 9.5 out of 10, and then if you're not jading and you're attacking I'll probably rate you a 7 out of 10. And the death one, the death tree is okay, I guess. It heals. It does double damage if you're 33% lower health or the enemy is, which in my opinion, is kind of a iffy gimmick. You only really want to use the tree if you're like about to die, like to get your health back. So I guess that's the only really benefit from it. Now we're gonna go talk about Myth. And I would have read about Myth for a while because every single time on Reddit, people complain about Myth, how Myth is so bad of a school. And people always say, oh, Myth is absolute garbage. Well, I'm going to talk about Myth for a while. And I'm going to say my 2 cents about Myth. Because it honestly has been really pissing me off that that's the case. You know what I mean? So, let's talk about Myth. Myth's, you know, supposed, you know, thing, like their kink is supposed to be that they can summon minions, right? Well, sadly, that doesn't help Myth at all. Minions suck at this game. For every school, minions are trash, absolute garbage. They don't do what you want to do, and sometimes they just be stupid and waste your traps and whatnot. Minions can help a little bit in PvP to get rid of tower shields, but other than that, the minions are just not good in the game, right? But people say that Myth is absolute, like, one of the worst schools of the game. You know, Myth is not a worse school in the game, okay? There isn't a worse school in the game, but Myth does have its advantages over other schools. For instance, Myth is the stun school. And now, let me explain why Myth is the stun school. For PvP, if people don't block against the Myth, well, don't stun block against the Myth, you can get stunned for, let's instance, 2 rounds. You know? You can get stunned for 3 rounds, not 3 rounds, but it does overtime for 3 rounds, and you get stunned. You know? With Colossus removes all traps, removes all shields from an enemy. You know? This puts a shield on you. You know, this removes blades and traps. Shadow removes all shields. So basically, Myth is really good for removing shields, as you can see here. And they also do a lot of stunning and whatnot. Like, they have some of the high key stun spells in the game. Now, people say Myth is bad because Myth is not good in group scenarios in PvE and solo scenarios in PvE. I can agree with the solo scenario. Myth is this odd school that you have to rely on minions to win because Myth doesn't really have a heal either. As you can see here, Myth doesn't really have a heal. So that's a problem with Myth. If Myth had a heal, it would be way better. But for solo scenarios, Myth is not lacking either. Mr. Colossus, in my opinion, is still really good in the game. Why? It's not as good as Bull. People would rather Bull than Mr. Colossus, but if you're facing versus a team of people or a team of enemies that shield a lot, then this is the way to go. This does damage. So if you put on a 300 epic with this does basically 1,180 damage to all enemies. And with the 130 gear, Myth has the most damage out of life and death. So when I compare the schools, I compare Fire, Ice, and Storm, Myth, Death, and Life. Myth, Death, and Life are supposed to be like middle schools for everything. One school being more of this, one school being more of this. And let me show you what I mean. So people always say that Myth is not good for damage. So let me explain to you why Myth is actually really good for damage. And I'm going to show you all the gear right now that I'm using for this setup. Okay? So I'm going to put on another pet. Okay? And it's going to give me more damage. This is not the pet. Hold on. I think this is the pet. 3, 6, 8, and 6. So, like I'm showing you guys now, I equipped my damage setup on my Myth, and I get 153 damage with 50% crit on. Sure, my power chase is bad because I equipped the wrong Athame on. If I went and actually equipped this Athame back on, my other one I had. There you go. This is better. 152 damage, 52% crit, 100% power pip chance, and perfect accuracy exactly with 152 damage on. And that's a lot, you know. My Pierce is a little bit low, but that's obviously a thing. So Myth can reach 150 damage, just like Storm. Just like Storm, Myth can reach it. And this is the problem I have with people. They think that Myth is trash. And Myth, sure, can be a little bit different. PvP wise, they're still pretty good. They can stun, they can do damage, their spells do a lot still. And Myth has one of the easiest trees in the game still to this day, which is do double damage if the enemy is stunned, which mostly won't happen in PvP, or just put 3 stun blocks on yourself. And which is one of the easier things, you just put 2 stun blocks on. You know? It's not that hard. You know? So Myth is still pretty good. Pretty good spell. Like, this is pretty good, does a lot of damage. Like, this is 1,400 damage, plus someone's a minion. Minion is pretty good, heals, does blaze and whatnot. You know? So, and this spell could do a lot of damage if, you know, you blade up enough and the overtime does mass. And Mr. Celestial Calendar does a whole lot of damage too and steals a pip. Like, this is like 1,470 about. Like, that's a lot of damage for a 10 pip spell. So in my opinion, Myth is not the worst as people think it is. It still does its damage, it still has the damage numbers, and it can still do a lot of work in this age. You know, people think that Myth is bad because Myth requires on minions or some stuff like that. It's not the worst school, okay? People think it is, but it's not. And I'm not saying it because I have a Myth. The reason why I made a Myth was because I want to try something new, something that people, because people always talking shit about Myth, how Myth is this, Myth is that, and I'm not talking about certain people I know. I'm just talking about people on Reddit and whatnot, and other people I've known in like Wizard101 Discords and stuff like that. They just don't like Myth, but I think Myth is a really good school. For PvE, solo, I'll rate Myth a 6 out of 10 without that heal. They're nothing. For group, I'd rate them a 8 out of a 10 for diversity and for studs. For PvP, I would rate them probably an 8 out of a 10. So it's not the worst numbers. Myth is still a good school. If you want to try something new, please try out Myth, okay? Myth is not that bad. Alright? It's one of my favorite schools I've ever played on. It's different. Life. Life is the healing school. Nothing much to say about this. Life is the best school to keep you alive in the game, hands down. And also, the best Jade. So for PvE, I'm just going to give Life a 10 out of 10. Because they can stay alive too. The problem with Life, and the problem I have with Life, is that they haven't really gotten an attack all spell since Celestia. And before you say, oh, but Count just went 3, you know, Wings of Fate, you know, that spell's really good. It's not good. It's not good, I promise. Okay, Wings of Fate's not that good of a spell, which is really sad. You know, Life got shafted with that. But Life can do a lot of work. I saw some Life PvP from Awesome the Sausage channel couple days ago, and I'm just like, wow, Life looks like it's a strong school because they can crit and get health back like this. So I would give Life a PvP a 9 out of a 10. Be hands down, their healing is way too good. They can break max crit or whatever they usually break with, right? I still have 120 something damage with like almost 50 resist across the school. It still almost have 8,000 health. So Life is still really good because they can crit a Satyr, get 4k health back, which is insane. That's 4 pip, 4k health. And Pigsy 2, by the way, which is one of the best healing spells in the game for PvE, hands down the best healing spell. So Life for group work and for soloing, PvE, 9 out of 10, hands down. Really good. The reason why it's not 10 out of 10 is because of the lack of damage. So this is why Life doesn't usually do a lot of damage. They usually just sit back and do the healing and support. So Life is more of a support school than anything. And for PvP, I would rate them like 4 out of 5. Because, you know, they still have some spells and some utility, like Luminous, that does some damage. And their tree is not the best. It's just healing. It's just a healing tree. Okay, now to the last school. We've gone over every single school except for the Battle School, which isn't really which is really, in the lore, isn't like a really school, but it's just the balance of all the schools. It's supposed to be the balance of all the schools. Balance can do some damage. So balance for PvP is a 5 out of a 5. I haven't seen an influx of balances maxes recently, believe it or not. I think they've kind of been stuffed out a lot recently because of certain things, but balance is still back in Age 2. Balance was a threat and a half to deal with because they have a spell called Lore Master into Gaze. There used to be a meme my friend did called Lore to Gaze because that's what people used to do. Gaze of Fate, in my opinion, is still a really good school. It's one of the best. It's one of the best spells Balance has, in my opinion. It does 2 hits, and it also changes the bubble to help Balance's damage out by 25%, I think. And Lore Master, one of the most iconic spells, does a lot of damage. If a balance was set properly, they could do about 1,000 to 1.5k per Lore Master hit, put you a negative 30 minus attack and a debuff to accuracy. So balance is not floating around. I don't know about 130 gear. I haven't really seen much balance 130 PvP because I haven't been really watching much recently. But balance is a threat in PvP for sure. So if you want to try out PvP that's not ice, do balance. For PvE, balance's only really helpful thing is blading others because they have the balance blades that all schools can use. The problem is that I have with balance is that they don't really have converts. So if someone does a shield, right? Well, also balance. Also, you can't shield against balance either. So I guess that's also really good. Yeah, you can't do a balance shield, right? I don't think you can. No, you can't do a balance shield. I don't know what I'm talking about balance shield for. But yeah, balance is like one of those schools where you want to test it out and whatnot, and all this stuff. So I would rate balance for PvE a 7.5 out of a 10 for their support. They can also go J2, I guess. Yeah, no balance shield, so you can't like do balance shield. I just want to double check. I know I should have checked that out, but I'm tired. I can't think. So out of all the schools, this is a too long, don't read information kind of thing. Storm, the attacking school, really good for PvP, really good for PvE. Hands down, I would pick it if you just want to do damage and be a glass cannon. Ice, really good for PvP. Obviously, one of the best schools in the game for that scenario. Also, has a lot of health, resist, and everything like that. So really good for soloing. But group battles, you may want to keep off and go Jade instead, because a lot of people would rather choose a Storm to attack over an Ice. Just saying. Fire, really good to do DPS. Does a lot of damage overtimes and whatnot. Gets shafted too much. I think Fire has the potential to be one of the best schools in the game if KingsL keeps on doing what they're doing to Fire, giving them more damage and whatnot. So I rate Fire for PvP, I think it was a 3.5 out of a 5, and then an 8 out of 10 for PvE and whatnot. And if the other schools, basically, Death is a healing back school, does really good job for soloing, 10 out of 10. For PvE, hands down for everything because of jading and whatnot. And for PvP, I'd rate them a soloer. I'd rate them like a 7 out of 10 because they're just not the best, Myth, different school, 8s and 7s across the board. Minions suck. Sadly, they suck. If they were actually good and you could control the minions' cards and choice, then Myth would be a really good school to use. KingsL, please. Because out of all the classes, I think Myth is the least picked class out of the game, which is kind of sad to think about, but I think it's true. Life, Healing School, one of the best, PvE classes, 10 out of 10 for PvE, and PvP, I rate them a 3.5 out of 5, because they can still do a lot. They're really good to fun to watch and whatnot, and stuff like that. And last but not least, Balance, really good to PvP, a 5 out of 5 score for PvP, because they can get up to like 7k health still and do a lot of damage and have a lot of resist and everything. So I rate them that. So I think that's it for this video, guys. If you disagree with me or you agree with me, feel free to leave down a comment below. Sure, I haven't made a Max Wizard for every single element, so there's some stuff I probably got wrong, but to finalize this all out, guys, there is no worst school or best school. the game KingZell does a really good job at balancing, not balancing, I should say balancing, but giving each school a specific role in the game. Like Ice as a tank, Storm as an attacker, Fire as a DPS, Myth as a mysterious or one of the random schools. I just feel like they need to put Myth more out there, a little bit more. Life is a healing spell. Death as like you sap the life away and you get their health. All that stuff. Life does a really good job. I mean, not Life. Kingston does a really good job at defining what each school does and the benefits of them. So that's all I'm going to say for today, guys. If you guys want more, you can follow me on my Twitch account, follow me on Twitter, or you can subscribe to me on there as well. You can like and subscribe to the video if you would like. You don't have to. I'm not forcing you. And that'll be it for this video, guys. I'll be seeing you around. Peace.